The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, and Daniel Wright stepped out into his world. Everything here screamed money. The marble floors reflected the morning sun like mirrors. The receptionist smiled that polished smile rich people paid for. Even the air felt expensive, pumped full of some designer scent that probably cost more than most people's rent. Daniel loosened his tie as he walked toward his corner office. At 38, he'd built Wright Capital into one of Manhattan's most respected investment firms. His father would have been proud. Actually, his father would have expected nothing less. The Wright family didn't just succeed. They dominated. It was in their blood, carved into their name. His assistant, Rachel, followed him with her tablet already open. Morning meetings, conference calls, a lunch with potential investors, the usual dance of someone who'd made it to the top and had to fight every day to stay there. "Don't forget," Rachel said, glancing up from her screen. "You have that community outreach thing at 2. The school in Brooklyn." Daniel barely looked up from his phone. "Right, the photo op." Rachel gave him that look. The one that said she knew exactly what he was thinking. These corporate responsibility events were all the same. Show up at some struggling school, hand over an oversized check, take pictures with smiling kids, and let the PR team work their magic. Good for business. Good for the company image. Everyone wins except Daniel had stopped believing that years ago. But it was part of the game, and he played it well. By 1:30, he was in the back of his town car watching Brooklyn roll past his window. The buildings got shorter. The streets got louder. This wasn't his world, and everyone knew it the moment his car pulled up to Jefferson Middle School. The principal was waiting at the entrance, practically vibrating with nervous energy. Behind her stood a woman who looked nothing like the principals and teachers Daniel usually met at these things. She wore simple black pants and a bright yellow blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she had this expression on her face that Daniel couldn't quite read. Not impressed. Not grateful. Just watching. "Mr. Wright." The principal rushed forward, hand extended. "We're so honored. This is going to make such a difference for our students." Daniel shook her hand, gave his practiced smile. "Happy to help. Education is the foundation of everything." The words came out smooth as silk. He'd said them 100 times before. "This is Alicia Thompson," the principal continued, gesturing to the woman in yellow, "one of our English teachers. She'll be coordinating the literacy program your donation will fund." Alicia stepped forward, and Daniel noticed she didn't rush, didn't seem nervous or starstruck. She just offered her hand with a polite nod. Her grip was firm. "Mr. Wright," she said simply. "Please call me Daniel." He turned on the charm, the easy smile that usually won people over. "I'm looking forward to seeing how we can support your students. Are you?" Alicia's voice was pleasant enough, but there was something sharp underneath it. "Because from what I understand, this is more about a tax write-off and good publicity than actually helping kids learn to read." The principal's face went pale. "Miss Thompson, I'm sure Mr. Wright doesn't—" But Daniel held up a hand, surprised to find himself actually curious. No one talked to him like this. Not anymore. Not in his world, where everyone wanted something from him. "No, it's fine," he said, studying Alicia's face. "What makes you think that?" She met his eyes directly. "Not challenging exactly, but not backing down either. Because I've been teaching here for 8 years. I've seen a lot of companies come through those doors with big checks and bigger cameras. They get their pictures, post them on social media, and then we never hear from them again. Meanwhile, my students still can't afford books. The computers in the lab are from 2010, and half my kids are reading 3 grades below level because we don't have the resources for proper intervention." The principal looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Daniel's PR manager, standing a few feet away with a camera crew, seemed frozen, but Daniel found himself nodding. "You're right." That seemed to catch Alicia off guard. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "I'm sorry." "You're absolutely right," Daniel repeated. "These events are usually exactly what you described. Show up, smile, write a check, and move on to the next thing." He paused, genuinely thinking for the first time in a long time. So what would actually help? Not the performance, not the photo op. What do your students really need? Alicia studied him for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if he was serious. Something in her expression shifted. Not quite trust, but maybe the possibility of it. "Time," she said finally. "Resources that last longer than a news cycle. Someone who actually shows up and sees these kids as more than a line item on a corporate responsibility report. Daniel found himself smiling. A real smile this time, not the practiced one. Fair enough. How about this? Cancel the photo op. Give me a tour. Show me what you're working with and we can talk about what would actually make a difference. His PR manager looked like he might have a heart attack. The principal seemed torn between relief and panic. But Alicia just nodded once, sharp and decisive. Follow me, she said. For the next 2 hours, Alicia Thompson showed Daniel Wright a world he'd never really seen. Not like this. She took him to classrooms where kids sat 3 to a textbook, to the computer lab where half the machines didn't work, to the library that hadn't had new books in 5 years. But she also showed him something else. The way her face lit up when she talked about a student who'd finally broken through a reading barrier. The careful way she'd organized a tiny classroom library with books she'd bought herself. The creative ways she'd found to teach Shakespeare to kids who'd never set foot in a theater. She was brilliant. Not in the way the people in his world were brilliant, with their Ivy League degrees and stock portfolios. Alicia was brilliant in a way that mattered. She saw potential in places other people saw problems. She built something real with almost nothing. And she called him on his nonsense. Every single time. When he suggested buying new computers, she asked who would maintain them. When he talked about hiring tutors, she pushed back about sustainability. When he offered to fund a reading program, she made him sit down and actually understand what that meant. Not just writing a check, but committing to something that would work. By the time Daniel left Jefferson Middle School that day, it was almost 6. His entire afternoon schedule had gone out the window. Rachel had sent him 3 increasingly frantic texts, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this energized. So, Alicia said as they stood by the school entrance, the building was quieter now, most of the kids gone home. Will you actually follow through? Or was this just a more elaborate version of the usual song and dance? Daniel should have been offended. In his world, people didn't question his word. But instead, he found himself wanting to prove her wrong, or maybe prove to her that he could be different. I'll be back next week, he said. Same time. We can start working on an actual plan, something sustainable. Alicia tilted her head, considering. Then for the first time since he'd arrived, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small curve of her lips, but it felt like winning something important. We'll see, she said. Daniel returned the next week, and the week after that. What started as proving a point became something else entirely. He'd show up at Jefferson Middle School with questions about literacy programs and leave having learned more than he taught. Alicia would share her frustrations about the education system, and he'd find himself actually listening instead of waiting to speak. They started meeting for coffee, just to discuss the program, they told themselves. But those meetings stretched longer. The conversations drifted from budgets and book orders to life and dreams and everything in between. Alicia told him about growing up in Queens, the daughter of a nurse and a bus driver who'd worked 3 jobs to put her through college, about choosing teaching because she remembered the one English teacher who'd seen something in her, when everyone else just saw another black girl from a rough neighborhood, about the moment she'd held her first novel and realized that words could be doors to anywhere. Daniel found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone in years. About the pressure of being a Wright, of carrying a family name that felt like it weighed more than he did. About his mother's expectations and his father's shadow. About how success felt hollow when you reached the top and realized you'd climbed the wrong mountain. You know what your problem is? Alicia said one afternoon, stirring sugar into her coffee. They were at a small cafe near the school, squeezed into a corner booth that had probably seen better days. I'm sure you're about to tell me, Daniel said, but he was smiling. You've spent so long being who everyone expects you to be that you forgot who you actually are. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. All that money, all that success. But when's the last time you did something just because it mattered to you? Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, because she was right. Painfully, obviously right. When had he last done anything that wasn't calculated? That wasn't part of the plan? This, he said quietly. Coming here. This matters to me. Alicia looked up from her coffee and something passed between them. Something that made Daniel's chest feel tight in a way that had nothing to do with stress or obligation. Yeah, she said softly. Me too, 6 months. That's how long it took for Daniel to realize he was in love with Alicia Thompson. 6 months of coffee shop conversations and heated debates about education reform, and quiet moments in her classroom after the kids went home. 6 months of discovering that the world looked different through her eyes. Bigger, more honest, more real. She challenged him in ways no one else did. Made him laugh. Made him think. Made him want to be better than the person he'd been performing for so long. And somewhere in those 6 months, in ways he couldn't quite trace, his carefully controlled world began to crack open. Not breaking. Opening. Letting light in. Daniel knew he should be worried about what came next. About introducing Alicia to his family, his world. About what people would say, what they'd think. The Wright family had expectations, and falling in love with a black teacher from Brooklyn wasn't on the list. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel Wright didn't care what anyone else thought. He only cared about the woman sitting across from him, gesturing animatedly about a book her students had finally understood, her whole face glowing with a joy that money couldn't buy. The invitation arrived on heavy cardstock, the kind that probably cost more than Alicia's weekly grocery budget, gold lettering, embossed edges. The Wright Foundation annual charity gala. Alicia held it up to the light in her small apartment, reading it for the 3rd time. Daniel had mentioned the gala in passing, but she hadn't expected a formal invitation. She definitely hadn't expected him to want her there. "It's black tie," her best friend Kenya said, peering over her shoulder. "Girl, do you even own a black tie dress?" Alicia didn't. But 3 days later, she found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror in a simple navy dress she'd found on sale. Nothing fancy, nothing that screamed money. Just elegant and her. Daniel picked her up himself, which surprised her. She'd half expected a car service. But there he was, standing at her door in a tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly rent, looking nervous. "You look beautiful," he said. "You look terrified," she replied. He laughed, but it was tight. "Is it that obvious?" "Daniel," Alicia touched his arm. "If you're not ready for me to meet your world, we don't have to do this." "I want you there," he said firmly. "I need you there. It's just my family. They can be difficult? That's one word for it." The gala was everything Alicia expected and worse. The venue was a museum that had been transformed into something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, women in gowns that cost more than a year of her salary, men in tuxedos discussing stock portfolios over champagne, and every single person who looked at them did a double take. Alicia felt it immediately. The subtle shift in the room when they walked in together. The way conversations paused, just for a beat. The lingering stares that tried to be discreet but weren't. She'd dealt with this her whole life, but it never got easier, especially not here in this world of wealth and privilege where she clearly didn't belong. Daniel kept his hand on the small of her back, steady and sure. But she could feel the tension in him too. "Daniel." A woman in a crimson gown approached them, her smile bright and brittle as glass. "So wonderful to see you. And who is this?" The way she said it, like Alicia was a curiosity, a puzzle to solve. "This is Alicia Thompson," Daniel said. "Alicia, this is Patricia Holloway. She sits on our foundation board. Lovely to meet you." Patricia's eyes swept over Alicia's dress, her hair, her face, cataloging, judging. "And what do you do, dear?" "I'm a teacher," Alicia said, keeping her voice even. "English. Middle school." "Oh, how wonderful." Patricia's tone suggested it was anything but. "That must be so rewarding. Daniel, your mother is looking for you. Something about the silent auction." Before Daniel could respond, Patricia had already moved on, trailing expensive perfume and dismissal. It went like that all night. Polite smiles that didn't reach eyes, questions that felt like interrogations. The woman who asked if Alicia was Daniel's date or worked for the catering company. The man who wanted to know where she was from, really from. Like Queens wasn't a sufficient answer. And through it all, Alicia held her head high. She'd been underestimated her entire life. She knew how to navigate spaces that didn't want her, but it hurt differently when the man she was falling for had to watch it happen. Then she met Catherine Wright. Daniel's mother was exactly what Alicia had imagined. Perfectly styled silver hair, a designer gown that probably required its own security detail, posture so straight it looked painful, and eyes that could freeze water at 20 paces. "Mother," Daniel said, and Alicia heard the warning in his voice. "I'd like you to meet Alicia Thompson." Catherine's smile was ice wrapped in silk. "Ms. Thompson, how nice." She didn't extend her hand.
Daniel has mentioned your school project.
Very charitable of you to get involved in such communities. Such communities. The words landed like a slap. I work in that community, Alicia said quietly. I live there. Those are my students, my neighbors. Of course. Catherine's expression didn't change. Daniel, your father needs you. Something about the presentation. You'll excuse us, won't you, Ms. Thompson? It wasn't a question. Daniel looked torn, but his mother's grip on his arm was firm. I'll be right back, he promised Alicia. Alicia watched them disappear into the crowd. She stood there alone in a room full of people, feeling every inch the outsider she was. A waiter passed with champagne, and she grabbed a glass just to have something to do with her hands. First time at one of these things, Alicia turned to find a young woman about her age, maybe a few years younger, with Daniel's dark hair and a friendly smile that seemed genuine. That obvious? Alicia asked. Only because you look like you'd rather be literally anywhere else. The woman extended her hand. I'm Lauren, Daniel's sister, and trust me, I'd rather be anywhere else too. These things are torture. Alicia shook her hand, grateful for the kindness. Alicia, I know. Daniel talks about you all the time. Lauren grinned. Which has been driving our mother absolutely insane, if I'm being honest. She's not big on surprises, and you, Alicia Thompson, are definitely a surprise. I'm getting that impression, Alicia said dryly. Lauren's smile faded a bit. Look, I know this crowd can be rough. Most of these people have never had to work for anything real in their lives. They don't know what to do with someone genuine. She paused. But Daniel does. And I've never seen him like this about anyone. So whatever my mother or these vultures say, you're good for him. Anyone can see that. Something in Alicia's chest loosened slightly. Thank you. That means a lot. Don't thank me yet. You're about to meet my father. Richard Wright Sr. was a larger presence than his wife, all booming voice and commanding gestures. He found them near the bar, Daniel finally back at Alicia's side. So you're the teacher, he said, looking Alicia up and down like she was a business proposal he was considering. Daniel says you've got quite the head on your shoulders. I do my best, Alicia replied. Teaching's noble work. Important. He said it like he was complimenting a child's drawing. Patronizing, but trying to hide it. Though I imagine the pay isn't great. Dad? Daniel's voice had an edge to it. What? I'm just making conversation. Richard turned back to Alicia. Must be quite different from all this. Very different, Alicia agreed. Where I come from, people actually work for their money. They know what it's like to struggle. To fight for every opportunity. She kept her tone pleasant, but there was steel underneath. It gives you perspective that all the champagne and ice sculptures in the world can't buy. Richard's eyebrows rose. Daniel looked like he was trying not to smile. Lauren outright laughed. Well, Richard said finally, you certainly don't mince words. Neither do you, sir. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Richard nodded once, sharp. Daniel, we need to talk privately. The rest of the evening was tense. Daniel was pulled away repeatedly by family members, each conversation seeming more heated than the last. Alicia could see them across the room arguing in low voices. Catherine looked furious. Richard looked stern. Daniel looked exhausted. By the time they left, it was past midnight. They sat in Daniel's car in silence for a long moment before he spoke. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? Your family being exactly who I expected them to be? For putting you through that. For not protecting you from it. Alicia looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd walked into her world and tried to understand it. Who'd shown up week after week learning and growing. Who looked at her like she was the most important person in any room, no matter how many diamonds and designer labels surrounded them. Daniel, she said, I don't need protecting. I need to know if this is real for you. Because your family made it very clear tonight that I'm not who they want for you, and I need to know if you're going to choose them or choose us. He reached across the console and took her hand. I choose you. Every time. In every way that matters. Then prove it, she said softly. 3 weeks later, Daniel walked into her classroom after school. Alicia was grading papers, red pen in hand, completely focused. Hey, she said without looking up. Give me 5 minutes. This kid actually used a semicolon correctly, and I need to document this historic moment. Alicia. Something in his voice made her look up. Daniel was standing in front of her desk, and he was shaking. Actually shaking. You asked me to prove it, he said. that I choose you, that this is real. And then he got down on one knee. Alicia's red pen clattered to the floor. I know we come from different worlds. I know my family is difficult and this won't be easy. But you've changed my life, Alicia. You've shown me what actually matters. What's real? He pulled out a small box. I don't want to live in my world without you in it. Will you marry me? The ring was simple, elegant, so unlike everything in his world. So perfectly her. Alicia thought about the gala, about his mother's ice-cold reception and his father's condescension, about all the challenges that would come if she said yes, about how hard it would be to merge their two worlds. Then she looked at Daniel, at the man who'd shown up every week to learn from her students, who'd listened when she challenged him, who'd defended her to his family even when it cost him, who looked at her right now like she was his whole world. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. Alicia wanted something simple, a small ceremony at the botanical gardens, close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, nothing that screamed right family drama. Daniel agreed immediately. After the gala disaster, he understood. Sometimes smaller was better, more intimate, more real. They sent out invitations to their closest people, Alicia's parents, her best friend Kenya, a few colleagues from the school. Daniel's sister Lauren was the only Wright family member who responded with an enthusiastic yes. The rest of the responses from his side were either polite regrets or complete silence. They're not coming, Daniel said one night, staring at the RSVP card spread across Alicia's kitchen table. His voice was flat, but she could hear the hurt underneath. Alicia came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. Then we get married with the people who actually want to be there, the people who matter. My parents matter, he said quietly, even if they're being impossible. I know. She kissed the top of his head, but we can't make them show up if they don't want to. The day before the wedding, everything changed. Alicia was at her apartment, trying on her dress one last time. It was cream-colored, simple, and elegant from a boutique in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, just beautiful in a quiet way. Kenya was helping with the hem when someone knocked on the door. I'll get it, Kenya said, disappearing into the living room. Alicia heard the door open. Then Kenya's voice tight with surprise. Can I help you? I'm here to speak with Alicia Thompson. Catherine Wright's voice was unmistakable. Cool and controlled. Alicia's stomach dropped. She stepped out of the bedroom, still in her wedding dress. Catherine stood in the doorway of her modest apartment, looking completely out of place in her designer suit and perfect makeup. Her eyes swept over the small space, taking in the worn furniture and peeling paint. Then they landed on Alicia in her wedding dress. Mrs. Wright, Alicia said, keeping her voice steady. This is a surprise. I need to speak with you, privately. Catherine's tone left no room for argument. Kenya looked at Alicia, concern written all over her face. Alicia nodded. It's okay. Give us a minute. Kenya reluctantly left, closing the bedroom door behind her, but not before giving Catherine a look that could cut glass. Catherine didn't sit down, even when Alicia gestured to the couch. She stood in the middle of the small living room like a general surveying enemy territory. I'll be direct, Catherine said. This marriage cannot happen, Alicia felt her jaw tighten. Excuse me? Daniel is making a mistake, one that will affect not just his life but our entire family's reputation and legacy. Catherine opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook. I'm prepared to offer you $2 million to walk away. Today, before this goes any further. The air seemed to leave the room. Alicia stared at the checkbook, then at Catherine's cold, determined face. You're bribing me. Alicia's voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm offering you an opportunity. $2 million would change your life. You could quit teaching, pay off any debts, travel, do whatever you want. All you have to do is leave my son alone, because you think I'm with him for his money. It wasn't a question. Catherine's expression didn't change. I think you're a nice girl who found herself in over her head. You come from a different world. You don't understand what life in ours requires. You mean I'm black and poor, so I don't belong. Alicia felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of this woman. I mean, you'll never be accepted. Our circles, our friends, our family, they'll always see you as different, always question you. Daniel will spend his entire life defending you instead of building his legacy. Is that really what you want for him? Alicia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm apartment. Get out. Ms. Thompson, I'm trying to be reasonable. Get out of my home. Alicia's voice was stronger now. I love your son. And he loves me. Not my bank account, not my connections, not what I can do for his career. Me. And if you can't see that, if all you see when you look at me is someone who doesn't belong, then you're the one who's missing out. Catherine's face remained impassive, but something flickered in her eyes. You're making a mistake. No, you are. Alicia walked to the door and opened it. The only mistake I'd be making is giving up the man I love because his mother thinks I'm not good enough. Now leave. Catherine stood there for a long moment, checkbook still in her hand. Then she put it back in her purse, smoothed her already perfect skirt, and walked to the door. She paused at the threshold. I hope you know what you're doing, she said quietly. I do, Alicia said. I'm marrying the man I love. The question is, do you know what you're doing? Because you're about to lose your son. Catherine left without another word. Alicia closed the door and leaned against it, her whole body shaking. Kenya rushed out of the bedroom. What just happened? Kenya asked, pulling her into a hug. She tried to pay me to leave Daniel, Alicia said, and finally let the tears come. $2 million to disappear. That woman is something else. Kenya held her tighter. What are you going to do? Alicia pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm going to tell Daniel, and then I'm going to marry him tomorrow, whether his family shows up or not. But when she called Daniel an hour later and told him what happened, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Daniel? Alicia said, her heart pounding. I'm coming over, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Don't go anywhere. He arrived 20 minutes later, and Alicia had never seen him this angry. His face was flushed, his hands clenched into fists. I'm going to talk to them, he said. Right now, tonight, this ends now. Daniel, maybe we should just, no. He took her hands. No more, maybe. No more trying to keep the peace. My mother crossed a line. Both my parents have crossed every line there is, and they need to hear, once and for all, that I'm marrying you. And if they can't accept that, if they can't treat you with the respect you deserve, then they're choosing to lose me. Alicia searched his face. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He pulled her close. You are my family now. You are my future. And anyone who can't see how lucky I am to have you doesn't deserve to be part of our lives. That night, Daniel drove to his parents' estate in Westchester. Alicia wanted to go with him, but he asked her to wait. This was something he needed to do alone. He found both his parents in the study exactly where he expected them. Catherine was reading. Richard was at his desk. They looked up when he walked in, and his mother's expression told him she knew exactly why he was there. How could you? Daniel's voice shook. How could you go to her apartment and try to bribe her? Do you have any idea how insulting that is? How cruel? Catherine set down her book. I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From being happy? From being loved by someone who actually sees me as a person and not just a name or a bank account? From making a choice that will make your life harder, Richard said, standing up. Son, your mother and I have concerns, let me guess. Concerns about what people will think. About our reputation. About the family name. Daniel laughed bitterly. You want to know what I'm concerned about? I'm concerned that I was raised by people who value appearances more than actual human beings. That's not fair, Catherine said, her voice rising for the first time. Fair? Daniel stepped closer. You tried to pay the woman I love to leave me. You've refused to come to my wedding. You've made it clear that you think she's beneath us, and you want to talk about fair? The room fell silent. Catherine's perfect composure was cracking. Richard looked older somehow. Tired. I'm marrying Alicia tomorrow, Daniel said, his voice steady now. Calm. I'm marrying her because she's brilliant and kind and challenges me to be better than I ever thought I could be. Because she loves me for who I am, not what I have. And because she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He looked at both of them, seeing them clearly maybe for the first time in years. You can be there to celebrate with us, or you can stay away. But either way, I'm marrying her. And if you can't accept her, if you can't treat her with love and respect, then you're choosing to lose your son. The choice is yours. The morning of the wedding, Alicia woke up with her stomach in knots. She hadn't heard from Daniel since he'd left for his parents' house the night before. No call. No text. Nothing. Kenya found her sitting on the edge of the bed staring at her phone. Still nothing? Kenya asked gently. Alicia shook her head. What if they changed his mind? What if he realized his family was right and I'm just going to make his life harder? Girl, stop. Kenya sat down next to her. That man proposed to you in your classroom surrounded by grammar worksheets. He chose you a long time ago. Whatever happened last night, he's still choosing you. Alicia wanted to believe that. She really did. But the silence was deafening. Her parents arrived at 10. Her father, Robert, still had the solid build of a man who'd worked physical jobs his whole life. Her mother, Patricia, wore a lavender dress she'd probably been saving for a special occasion. They both looked nervous and excited and proud all at once. My baby girl's getting married, her mother said, pulling her into a tight hug. You look beautiful, honey. Thanks, Mama. Alicia held on a little longer than usual. Her father studied her face. You okay, sweetheart? You seem worried. Just wedding nerves, Alicia lied, forcing a smile. But her father knew her too well. He'd raised her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone make her feel less than. He also knew when something was really wrong. His family giving you trouble? He asked quietly. Alicia nodded. They don't think I'm good enough for him. Her father's jaw tightened. That's their loss. Any man would be lucky to have you. And if Daniel can't see that, he does, Alicia said quickly. He does see it. It's just his parents who have the problem. Her mother squeezed her hand. Then let them have their problem. Today's about you and Daniel, nobody else. The ceremony was set for 2 p.m. at the Botanical Gardens. By 1:30, Alicia was in the small changing room near the entrance, adjusting her dress for the 100th time. Through the window, she could see the setup. White chairs arranged in neat rows. An arch covered in flowers. It was simple and perfect and exactly what she'd wanted. The groom's side was almost empty, just Lauren, Daniel's sister, sitting in the front row looking uncomfortable and defiant at the same time. The bride's side had Alicia's parents, Kenya, a few teachers from her school and some friends from the neighborhood. Not many people, but they were there because they wanted to be, because they loved her. At 1:45, her phone finally buzzed. A text from Daniel, I'm here. I love you. See you soon. The knot in Alicia's chest loosened just a little. He was here. Whatever had happened last night, he'd shown up. That was what mattered. At 2 o'clock, the music started. A simple string quartet playing something soft and beautiful. Kenya went down the aisle first, smiling so wide it looked like her face might crack. Then it was time. Alicia's father offered his arm. Ready, baby girl? She took a deep breath. Ready? They stepped out into the garden and Alicia's eyes went straight to Daniel. He stood at the altar in a gray suit, looking nervous and happy and relieved all at once. When he saw her, his whole face lit up, like she was the only person in the world. She started walking down the aisle, her father steady beside her. And then she saw movement in her peripheral vision. Someone was walking in late. Actually, 3 people. Catherine Wright, Richard Wright, and an older couple Alicia didn't recognize. Catherine looked different. Her perfect composure was still there, but something in her face had changed. She wasn't wearing her usual armor of cold superiority. She looked nervous, almost vulnerable. They took seats in the front row on the groom's side, right next to Lauren. The whole garden seemed to hold its breath. Alicia kept walking, her father's arm the only thing keeping her steady. Daniel was watching his parents with an expression she couldn't read. Surprise, hope, uncertainty. When they reached the altar, her father kissed her cheek. I love you, he whispered. Then he placed her hand in Daniel's. Daniel squeezed it tight, like he was afraid to let go. The ceremony was short, simple. The officiant talked about love and commitment and choosing each other every day. Daniel said his vows and his voice cracked when he promised to always choose her no matter what. Alicia said hers, promising to challenge him and support him and love him through everything. And then they were married. Husband and wife. The small crowd applauded and Daniel kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. The reception was in a small pavilion next to the ceremony site. Nothing fancy. Just cake and punch and simple decorations, but it was theirs. Alicia was talking to her mother when she saw Catherine Wright approach. Every muscle in her body tensed. Mrs. Wright, Alicia said carefully. Catherine looked uncomfortable, really genuinely uncomfortable. I wonder if I might have a moment. There's something I need to say. She glanced at the small crowd. To everyone, if you'll let me. Alicia looked at Daniel, who'd appeared at her side. He looked as confused as she felt, but he nodded. Catherine walked to the center of the pavilion. Someone handed her a microphone. The room fell silent. "I don't do this often," Catherine began, and her voice shook slightly. "Admitting I'm wrong. But my son taught me last night that there's a first time for everything." She looked directly at Alicia. "I came to your home and insulted you in the worst way possible. I tried to bribe you to leave my son. I judged you without knowing you. And I did all of this because I was afraid. The room was so quiet you could hear the wind in the trees outside. I was afraid," Catherine continued, her voice growing stronger, "because you represent everything I've spent my life running from." She took a shaky breath. "My grandmother was black, her name was Ruth, and she was beautiful and brilliant, and she had to pretend to be white her entire adult life, just to survive in a world that wouldn't accept her." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's mouth fell open. Even Richard looked shocked. "My family buried that truth," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face now. "We never talked about it. We built our whole lives around pretending it never happened, and I let that fear, that shame poison me. I became everything I was afraid of. I became the person who would have rejected my own grandmother." She turned to Alicia again. "When I look at you, I see everything my grandmother never got to be. Proud, accomplished, unapologetically herself. And instead of celebrating that, I tried to destroy it because it reminded me of my own cowardice." Catherine walked closer to Alicia, her composure completely gone. "I am so sorry. For what I said. For what I did. For every moment I made you feel less than the remarkable woman you are. You didn't deserve any of it." Alicia didn't know what to say. This was the last thing she'd expected. Catherine Wright, the Ice Queen, was standing in front of her crying and revealing a family secret that explained everything. "I brought my aunt and uncle today." Catherine gestured to the older couple Alicia had noticed earlier. "Ruth's children. They're the only family who knew the truth. I wanted them here because it's time to stop hiding. Time to stop being ashamed of who we are." Richard Wright stood up. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "I owe you an apology too, Alicia. I let my wife's fears become my own. I was so worried about reputation and legacy that I forgot what actually matters. Family, love, integrity." He paused. "You're good for my son. Anyone can see that. And I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner." The silence stretched. Everyone was watching Alicia, waiting to see what she would do. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was her chance to reject them the way they'd rejected her. To make them feel the pain they'd caused. But when she looked at Catherine, all she saw was a woman who'd been carrying a terrible burden for most of her life. A woman who'd let fear turn her into someone she probably never meant to be. "Thank you for telling me the truth," Alicia said quietly. "And for coming today." That took courage. Catherine wiped her eyes. "Can you forgive me?" Alicia thought about it. Really thought about it. "I think forgiveness is something we'll have to work toward. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day. But I'm willing to try if you are." Catherine nodded, something like hope crossing her face. "I am. I promise I am." Daniel pulled Alicia close. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I think so," she said. And she meant it. This wasn't the ending she'd expected. It wasn't neat or perfect. There was still so much to work through, so many conversations to have, so much healing that needed to happen. But for the first time since this whole journey began, Alicia felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Not just her and Daniel. All of them. Together. 2 years later, Alicia stood in front of her classroom watching her students work through their reading assignments. It was a different classroom now. Newer computers lined one wall. The shelves were packed with books. Real books, not the falling apart copies from a decade ago. And in the corner sat a reading nook with comfortable chairs where kids actually wanted to spend their time. The Wright Foundation had made it all possible. But not in the way Daniel's family used to do charity. This was different, real, sustainable. Catherine herself came by once a month to volunteer, reading with students who were struggling. She was patient in ways Alicia never would have expected. Kind in ways that seemed to surprise Catherine herself. It hadn't been easy these 2 years. There were still awkward family dinners. Still moments when Catherine's old instincts kicked in and she said something that came out wrong. Still times when Richard looked uncomfortable at events where he was the only white face in the room. But they were trying. Really trying. And that counted for something. Alicia's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Mom wants to know if we're still coming for dinner tonight. Says she's making your favorite. Alicia smiled. Catherine had learned to cook Alicia's mother's jambalaya recipe. It still wasn't quite right, but the effort was what mattered. The fact that she'd asked Patricia Thompson to teach her. The fact that she kept trying to get it perfect. Tell her yes, Alicia texted back. And that I'm bringing dessert. After school, she met Catherine at a coffee shop halfway between Brooklyn and Manhattan. It had become their thing. Every other Tuesday, just the two of them. At first, it had been stiff and formal. Catherine asking careful questions. Alicia giving careful answers. Both of them dancing around the elephant in the room. But slowly, something had shifted. Catherine had started sharing stories about her grandmother, Ruth. About the photographs she'd found hidden in her aunt's attic. About the life Ruth had lived in secret, always afraid of being discovered. About the toll that fear had taken on everyone, and Alicia had started sharing too. About what it was like growing up in Queens, feeling like she had to work twice as hard to get half as far. About the teachers who'd written her off and the one who hadn't. About choosing to teach in struggling schools because she remembered what it felt like to be those kids. Today, Catherine was already at their usual table, 2 coffees waiting. She smiled when she saw Alicia. A real smile, not the polished one from the gala. I have something for you, Catherine said, pulling out a small box. I wanted to give it to you before dinner tonight. In private, Alicia opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, old but beautiful, and hanging from it was a small locket. It was Ruth's, Catherine said quietly. The only piece of jewelry she kept from her old life, before she started passing. I found it in my aunt's things after she passed last month. Alicia opened the locket. Inside was a tiny faded photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a determined jaw. She looked like Catherine. She looked like Daniel. She looked like family. Catherine, I can't take this. It's your family heirloom. You are family, Catherine said, and her voice cracked slightly. And Ruth would have wanted you to have it. She would have loved you, been proud of you, seen herself in you. She reached across the table and took Alicia's hand. You're the granddaughter she never got to be. The life she never got to live. And I want you to have a piece of her. Tears pricked Alicia's eyes. 2 years ago, this woman had tried to bribe her to disappear. Now she was giving her a family treasure and calling her granddaughter. Thank you, Alicia whispered. This means everything. That evening at dinner, the whole family gathered. Daniel and Alicia, Catherine and Richard, Lauren and her new girlfriend, and Alicia's parents, who'd become unexpected friends with the Wrights. The two couples had more in common than anyone expected. Both sets of parents just wanted their kids to be happy. Both had learned hard lessons about letting go of expectations. Halfway through dinner, Alicia caught Daniel's eye. He smiled at her in that way that still made her heart skip. Then he cleared his throat. Actually, we have some news, Daniel said, reaching for Alicia's hand. Alicia felt her heart pounding. They'd talked about this moment. Planned it. But now that it was here, she was terrified. We're pregnant, Alicia said, the words tumbling out. About 3 months. We just got confirmation from the doctor. The room erupted. Her mother burst into tears. Her father jumped up to hug them both. Lauren squealed. Richard beamed like someone had given him the best news of his life. But Catherine just sat very still, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mom, Daniel said, suddenly worried. Are you okay? Catherine stood up and walked around the table. She pulled both Daniel and Alicia into a tight hug. I'm more than okay, she whispered. I'm grateful. So incredibly grateful. She pulled back and looked at Alicia. 2 years ago, I would have been worried about what people would say, what they would think about our family. But now, she shook her head, smiling through tears. Now I'm just excited to meet my grandchild, to watch them grow up proud of who they are, all of who they are. Later that night, after everyone had left and it was just Daniel and Alicia in their apartment, they sat on the couch in comfortable silence. Alicia wore Ruth's bracelet. It felt right on her wrist, like it belonged there. Can you believe how far we've come? Daniel asked, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. Honestly, some days, no. Alicia leaned into him. Remember when your mother tried to pay me to leave you? And now she's knitting baby blankets. Daniel laughed. Lauren sent me a picture. They're terrible, but she's so proud of them. Alicia smiled. People can change. When they want to. when they're willing to do the hard work. Your parents and mine having monthly dinner dates. That's still wild to me. Your dad asking my dad for grilling tips. My mom teaching your mom to make cornbread. Alicia shook her head. It's like we created this whole new world. That's exactly what we did, Daniel said seriously. We refused to accept the world the way it was and built something better. Something real. 3 months later, Catherine insisted on throwing a baby shower, not at some fancy venue, at the school. In Alicia's classroom, surrounded by her students' artwork and the books they'd helped choose. She invited everyone, Alicia's colleagues and neighbors, the Wright family's friends who'd slowly learned to see past their own prejudices, both sets of parents working together to set up decorations. Catherine gave a speech, short but powerful, about legacy and what it really means, about how she'd spent most of her life worried about the Wright family name, when what she should have been worried about was the Wright family values. This child, Catherine said, her hand on Alicia's belly, will grow up knowing all of their heritage, black and white, working class and wealthy, Brooklyn and Manhattan, and they'll be stronger for it, richer for it, more complete. When Grace Catherine Wright was born 6 months later, she had her father's dark hair and her mother's bright eyes. She was perfect, absolutely perfect. At the hospital, both sets of grandparents crowded into the room. Catherine held Grace first, tears streaming down her face. She looks like Ruth, she whispered. She has her eyes. She looks like all of us, Alicia's mother said gently. Past and future. Everything we were and everything she'll be. Richard Wright, who'd once worried about biracial grandchildren not being accepted in their circles, couldn't stop staring at his granddaughter like she was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. She's beautiful, he kept saying. Just beautiful. A year later at Grace's first birthday party, Daniel looked around at the celebration. His parents and Alicia's parents were arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to babysit. Lauren was teaching some of Alicia's students a card game. Former board members of the Wright Foundation were chatting with teachers from the school about their new education initiatives. The party was everything their wedding reception should have been. Loud and messy and full of love. Soul food and expensive catering mixed together on tables. Hip-hop playing alongside jazz. Two worlds that had learned to become one. What are you thinking about? Alicia asked, coming up beside him with Grace on her hip. How none of this would have happened if you hadn't called me out that first day at the school. Daniel took Grace from her arms, and his daughter immediately grabbed his nose. If you'd been polite, if you'd let me do my photo op and leave. I'm not really good at polite when something matters, Alicia said. I know. That's why I fell in love with you. He kissed her forehead, then Grace's. You showed me what real looked like. What it meant to actually care about something instead of just performing caring. Across the room, Catherine was reading to a group of children. Grace's baby cousins and kids from the neighborhood all mixed together. She looked happy, really happy, like she'd finally let go of something heavy she'd been carrying for decades. Your mom's different now, Alicia observed. She's free, Daniel said simply. For the first time in her life, she's actually free. Free from the lies, free from the fear, free to just be herself. We all are, Alicia said softly. Later, as the party was winding down, Catherine pulled Daniel and Alicia aside. I want to do something, she said. The foundation. I want to rename it. After Ruth. The Ruth Wright Memorial Foundation for Education. I want her legacy to be about building bridges, about creating opportunities for kids like the ones Alicia teaches, kids who just need someone to believe in them. She looked at Alicia, and I want you to run it. Not Daniel, you. You know what these communities need. You understand in ways I'm still learning. Alicia was speechless. Catherine was offering her not just a job, but real power, real ability to make change. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Catherine smiled. Help me turn my grandmother's hidden shame into something beautiful. Something that actually matters.